What is up, gentlemen? Happy to see you guys for another episode of the Blind Pig Podcast, courtesy of bgobsession.com. If you want to know, a blind pig is another name for a speakeasy. This is just a couple boys sitting around talking football and enjoying ourselves. So sit down, grab a drink or whatever, and join us in some conversation. It's 2025, so you know you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, all audio platforms, all of that good jazz. So give us a like, a share, and a follow. Show us some love. We appreciate it. And, of course, come and find us at bgobsession.com, the mothership. We're always there, and we are always talking Commanders. So, boys, this would be a good time. I guess we can start this off with the initial reaction of the Bengals game. I've got my personal opinions on things, but as a customary, I generally like to let you guys talk first. So I'm curious, Paul, what was your immediate react now? We're 36 hours post or 48 hours post Bengals game. How'd you feel about that one?
So what stood out most to me is that outside of our quarterback, because obviously anybody that wants to win a Super Bowl needs elite quarterback play. But outside of that, what stood out most to me was the fact that we looked fairly competent and we looked pretty strong on both the offensive line and defensive line. So in the trenches, I thought that the groups that we rolled out there in the first quarter, those first few drives there of the game, I thought they did a great job. And it just brings me a lot of optimism that, our two lines seem to be a strength the other night against the Bengals there. That 4-play touchdown drive, that was all set up by, excellent blocks up front. I thought that our defensive line was, giving Burrows some fits. He had to work for everything that they got the other night offensively. And they were pretty active. They were getting some good pressure. And again, outside of your quarterback, your two lines have to be outstanding. And to me, there was some definite optimism created in both those regards.
I like it. What about you, Tony? What did you see?
I was encouraged by this game. It was just good to see some of the starters and the frontline players get in there. You really couldn't ask anything more for the starting offense. They just went in there, made easy work of it, and were smart and just took Jaden out, not to risk anything. And the defense, I thought, did a good job too. It felt like the Bengals had to rely on penalties and going for it on fourth down and just going all out to really make any progress. And they were flying around. And then also what stood out to me was the rookies. It seemed like they all had good games and played pretty well, held themselves together. Conley played well. The running back, Bill, of course, and Jalen Lane, like Madrano, they all seemed to, when they had their chance, come in and make plays. So that was encouraging too. And just overall the effort and just the intensity was a lot better than last week.
Yeah, I will second and third at what you guys have said, but what jumped off the page at me was it looked like Dan Quinn in that offensive coaching staff had the boys on the blocking sleds this week. Like the run blocking and the running ability of this offense was dynamically different than we saw in the first preseason game, and it wasn't just the starters. Chris Rodriguez, 6 carries, 62 yards. That's a 10.3 average, including a big gasher of about 30 plus off the right side on ironically a counter tray. I don't know if you guys have seen those highlights floating around Twitter, but we pulled both the left guard and the left tackle, and he read it perfectly and cut back right into a massive hole and broke out. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who played a hell of a lot longer than I expected because he had a couple big plays and he was playing into the third quarter, had 11 for 46. Deebo Samuel, we saw him with his first touch, 1 for 19. Jaden Daniels with a scramble for 14. McNichols added on 3 for 10, which isn't exactly a high average, but there was effective running from beginning to into the middle of the third quarter when kind of everything was, when we were actually paying attention. Offensive line looks great. Connerly looks like he's developing further. I saw Brian Baldinger and Logan Paulson call out Chris Paul on a couple of his plays, specifically his plays.
Baldinger loves calling out our good
O-line. Yeah,
he loves that.
Yeah, so. I mean, when you got guys like that are pointing out blocking, those guys know more about football than the three of us have. They've forgotten more about football than the three of us have ever known. So when those guys are the ones talking about it, that's a big deal. Klasky Merritt looks like he has what it takes to be the real deal. I'm not going to say he's the real deal after a couple preseason games, but man, that guy looks explosive. He looks like he's got good vision. He runs angry as hell. Somebody on the board, I believe, comped him to Isaiah Pacheco, and I think it's like a perfect comp. I don't know. I can't remember if we mentioned that last podcast, but he's the kind of guy that you start to see this stuff, and you're like, well, this is obviously why the coaching staff is looking at Brian Robinson and saying they're seeing this kind of stuff from the other guys, like in seeing that he's possibly expendable. Before we move on, I will also say the pass rush looked really good. There was pressure multiple times, including Joe Burrow sacked multiple times, forced fumble.
Dude, what's with the Bengals leaving Joe Burrow in the game?
He was getting punished, and they just left him in there.
Chase out, but they're like, let's leave our best player and
continue to get beat up.
Yeah,
and he's running around like slinging it like it's December. Like, I get it, man. You're competitive, but you're running 25 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and you're getting grabbed. And there was another sack that ultimately ended up being a penalty of a horse collar that looked just uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Dietrich Wise, I believe, got him. And he just ate up the right guard and just was in his lap and just chased him around. It was great. So I love I like the pass rush, and I like the running game as a whole. One other thing that I did hear a lot about was our linebackers. Our second Kane Madrano and Tyler Owens were kind of flying around. So good to see the positives there. Anything else you guys saw? Anything else that we wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I'll add something. I was going to say it earlier, but I figured I'd talk about the lines instead. But the tackling in the secondary seemed to be pretty on point. Quan Martin's made some outstanding tackles in space. There are a few other guys I can't quite, off the top of my head, can't quite remember, but that defensive secondary was certainly on point with their tackling. And I mean, how many times have we watched this team just, miss tackle after miss tackle over the years? And I mean, that was quite pleasant to see. Hopefully it carries over into the regular season. But I'm personally pretty high on our secondary, and I have really high hopes for what they can do as a unit this year. And it was just nice to see that, over and above the whole coverage aspect, that they were able to be pretty steady with their tackling, and that's fundamental football. And Dan Quinn talks about that all the time. And you got to be able to tackle. You got to be able to make the simple fundamental plays. And I thought that we were pretty good in that regard on Monday.
You mean watching Mitch Tinsley make two obscene touchdowns against our 5th and 6th string cornerbacks doesn't get you all excited and the sky's falling?
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. If put it this way, if we're depending on Bobby Price to be playing meaningful snaps during the regular season, then we're in a whole heap of trouble. So I don't think that that's going to be happening.
Yeah, exactly. And that, speaking of like the secondary play, that and the tackling, Quan Martin had a really sick open field tackle on the goal line. That was awesome.
I think he had one on the goal line, and I think Reeves had one. Was it Reeves or was it Martin to stop a third down? on like a swing pass to the flat in the open field. There was a play, and I want to say it was on third down, and it would have converted, but it ended up forcing a fourth. I think they still ultimately went for it, but yeah, I gotta agree with you, Paul. The tackling looks great compared to years past. They just look like a disciplined football team. There's gap assignments. You've got guys that are doing their jobs, and you're right. How many times have we seen a guy catch a swing pass and break 4 tackles and turn a 3-yard loss into a 9-yard gain? And it's just crippling to the defense, you know what I mean? And that's what's extended drives. I will say that we did have the first one of the drives we extended ourselves. I'm hoping it was Luvu just trying to time a cadence up. Obviously, I think he was just trying to, the offsides extended a drive, and then there was a kind of a bad pass interference penalty against somebody covering. It might have been Bobby Price covering Jamar Chase on the near side, going on like a corner route, and when Chase didn't even find the ball, he wouldn't have caught it because he didn't even see it. So the play, he didn't even have to make the play, but there was a tug there. So ultimately, that first drive would have been a 3-and-out if it hadn't have been for those 2 penalties, which ultimately resulted in a touchdown. But to your point, Paul, if we're expecting to win and we've got Bobby Price covering Jamar Chase in a regular season game, we're going to have to hang 40. I don't think we're going to be able to count on being able to stop them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're throwing these accolades at the team, and rightfully so, because we saw a lot of positive things there against Cincinnati. And just to add one other thing to that, we're seeing good things happening on the offensive line. We talked about some of the nice things that we've appreciated with what the secondary is doing. We also need to keep in mind that on our offensive line this past Monday, I think we had 3 guys that were expecting to be long-term starters out of the lineup. Same thing with our secondary. You didn't see Lattimore. You didn't see Amos. Sainer still wasn't playing. Hopefully that is only a sign of even better things to come, because, it was quite impressive, but we also need to keep in mind that, there were guys that weren't in the lineup that should make us even stronger. So I'm quite excited.
A lot of guys.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
We didn't have our starting center. And we can transition to the upcoming week, because quick turnaround, unless there's anything else on the Bengals you guys wanted to talk about.
No, I think we covered it.
Quick turnaround. We have a Saturday day game at noon kickoff against the Ravens. Interestingly enough, it's kind of an oddity, you know what I mean? But a couple little updates as we kind of ramp up towards the season here. Brandon Coleman back at practice. That's big. Trey Amos back at practice. Dan Quinn said that Cosme has hit all the markers. He has not gotten back to practice yet, but they're still encouraged. And of him being possibly, it says, on the active roster coming out of camp, which would lead you to believe that he's at least less than 4 weeks out, because if they don't see him coming back till week 4, you'd pup him and then, not even occupy the roster spot. So it's good to see those kind of things as we're moving up. Obviously, I'm not expecting to see hardly anybody Saturday. That is going to be, it's going to be Sam Hartman, in my opinion, more than anything, because I think they're going to try to it's going to be either show us what you got and prove it, or we're going to let you be the tackling dummy for the majority of the game so that we can preserve the guy we're going to keep, or showcase what you got in order for other teams to see it. I guess before we do totally move on, I would like to hear your guys' stance on Hartman, and what you would think about him and where he's at and what his future holds in the burgundy and gold, if there even is one.
Yeah, to me, he doesn't really offer much. Last preseason, this preseason, it's just not clicking for him, or it's not performing at this level I think I've mentioned several times. The only time anyone ever talks about him is about his hair and how he looks. But his play on the field
and how he has close friends with Jaden. Like,
yeah, his play on the field is not good, and then it also doesn't help the other deaf guys that are out there because they're not getting good quarter or like even like serviceable quarterback play. So it hurts like the fifth string wide receiver kind of thing. So I don't really have much hope for him. You could put him in the practice squad because like we've heard he's good friends with Jaden. You know, you want to keep Jaden happy and you just have his buddy around for shits and giggles, sure. But I don't expect anything from him.
Yeah, in an absolute emergency situation, this is kind of the way I look at it. In an absolute emergency situation that we had to, for whatever reason, go to our third string quarterback because Daniels or Mariota are not available, I think I'm leaning towards the experience of a guy like Josh Johnson that's been in the league forever and pretty much played for every team under the sun. So, it's been a pretty tall mountain to climb for Hartman, and quite frankly, we haven't seen a lot that should instill confidence in our group that he can deliver if ever needed to in a given situation. So, yeah, it's a hard no for me.
Yeah, watching him play, there was a couple plays that when it clicks and he throws with anticipation, they look good. You know what I mean? But 60% of his pass attempts just look like he's just got to put every possible ounce of himself behind the ball to try to get it to go anywhere. And he had a bad pick, right? And then he almost had another bad pick down in the shadow of our own goal line in the 2-minute drill where the DB just sat on it and broke on it at the break because he had no concern of anything over the top. That it's just tough. And I like Hartman. I watched him on QB1, that Netflix special about high school football players. I kind of followed him at Wake Forest a little bit. You know, he's got an elite college, an illustrious college career as far as statistically, and then going to Notre Dame. But I just don't think he's got it. I don't think he's ever going to have the arm talent. He's going to have to become one of those guys that just can completely outsmart a defense and play with anticipation. And I just don't think they have time for that right now. Now, you know what I mean? Like I can't. I would imagine he'll probably ride out the remainder of his rookie deal on our practice squad. I don't know that they'll outright cut him and let him just walk the streets because he does know the system and he knows Jaden and he knows the coaching staff and he's familiar. So, but at this point, it's hard to believe he's anything more than our fourth string quarterback. And I mean, you're in a bad spot if you're getting down to your fourth quarterback. You know, that's Mark Sanchez territory against the Giants. You know, it's bad. So,
yeah.
So on that note, do you think, like I said, do you think he's the primary quarterback this weekend, or do you think we've seen more Josh Johnson?
I think they'll probably, or I'm guessing they'll probably split it. I think they might start Josh Johnson just to, so everyone gets a fair shake. The other deaf guys, but then Sam Hartman will come in too. But I think it's between the two of them.
I agree. I think Hartman plays the majority of it. We don't have to go too in depth, and this can actually be kind of a short pod. And we can talk a little bit about maybe who's on the bubble, but I don't think that we're going to see much from the game against Baltimore. It's going to be a glorified scrimmage, in my opinion. I think there will be some interesting things to see, and that's where we can kind of transition now to. I'll ask you guys, what are a couple names of bubble players that you think are fighting for a job this weekend? What guys come to mind when you're talking about they could play their way onto or off the roster on Saturday? Because those are going to be the kind of guys that we're really going to see more of. It's going to be more of that than it is going to be, any kind of actual impact on the season on any kind of regular basis.
So the one name that immediately and instantly comes to mind when you say that, I'm looking specifically at special teams, and that's a guy like Kaz Allen. We're seeing him back there fielding kickoffs, I believe. It feels like if he has a role on this team, it's solely on special teams. I don't know if they'd use a roster spot for that. It's hard to say, but yeah, that would be one name that possibly pops to mind.
Yeah, because he's listed as a running back, right? And if you look at the running backs, we have Krosky Merritt, Austin Eckler, Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, Felton, and that's not even including Brian Robinson and then Kaz Allen. I mean, that's I don't unless he pops a couple for touchdowns and proves like to speak on him. I've had my frustrations watching him return because he does too much of that Antoine Randall shit back there. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll watch him approach the line and then try to bounce it around and try and find a hole, and at that point it's too late. You got to get there was one kick return he finally did against Cincinnati where he just ran like a 6-year-old running into the pool into the line, you know what I mean, and ended up getting up to like the 32-yard line, and I'm like, finally, like you're not gonna be able to dance around back there. You gotta hit the hole and hit it hard, and if there's not a hole there, you figure it out. You know what I mean? But that Dancy shit ain't gonna happen. Sorry, Paul, not to cut you off, brother.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
What about you, Tony? Anybody you're looking at?
Yeah, I think maybe Ja'Cory Brooks, like him and versus like Gallup and KJ Osborne for like the back end receivers. I think that's something to watch or keep an eye on. And then maybe someone like Chris Paul. He sounds like he's been moving up the depth chart, so he see how much he plays and kind of for the depth on the O line kind of thing. And I think his name is like Cahill or something. One of the backup linebackers flashed and seemed to make a lot of plays too, with Caden Medrano on this last game, and we'll see how that goes too. But yeah, it's really for the back end guys, and they all have to play special teams too to make the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the wide receiver. Sorry, go ahead, brother.
No. Finish your thought, and then I'll share it after Derek.
I was going to say the wide receiver room is probably the one that's gotten the most parity, I guess. I don't know what else to say because of the Terry McLaurin situation. You've got Terry McLaurin, you got Noah Brown, you got Deebo Samuel. I think those are the only three guys that are true locks. Everybody behind that is fighting for 2 to 3 spots. And depending on what happens with the running back room, it only might be 2 spots. You might only carry 5 wide receivers.
Yeah. Well, I think Lane is another lock at this point.
Huh?
I think Jalen Lane's a lock at this point.
Too. Yeah, Lane. Yeah, he's a draft pick. So it might be 1 or 2 spots. Because if you look at a guy like Felton, and I said this on the board, Felton's listed as a running back, but he's 5'9" to hit 190, and he played college receiver. You know what I mean? So if you look at a guy who can be a direct backup to a guy like Deebo Samuel, that's where Kaz Allen could have made his money, and I don't think he's done it. But a guy like Felton, who's run effectively, he didn't even play in this last game. So you start to wonder if that's where they look at for like that depth and that flexibility at position. So that's your backup to Deebo, and your backup to Deebo isn't necessarily the 6th wide receiver. He's the 5th running back. So other than that, I think all the other positions are pretty much spoken for, except for some of that interior O-line, like you said, Chris Paul, and a couple little position groups there. But the other thing is maybe the safety room. There's a lot going on there, and Jeremy Reed's been balling out this preseason. So I'm starting to wonder if he's not pushing himself to the point where he doesn't want to be just known as a special teamer. He wants to be a legitimate roster player that that they're counting on, and he can even come in on some 4 DB circumstances or whatever. So what were you going to say, Paul?
No, what I was going to add is I found that question fairly difficult to answer. And in a lot of ways, I feel that the fact that I found it difficult to answer is actually a good thing, because how many times in the past have we fallen in love with these training camp darlings? You know, everybody had their crushes in training camp, guys that we thought could have come out of nowhere and made contributions. And a lot of times those guys ended up finding their way onto the roster. It just feels like the roster has undergone, quite the massive transformation over the last couple seasons. And we're a pretty deep team. There does not seem to be a lot of opportunity for guys to find their way on this roster. And I think that is a sign of a team that is getting better. I think it's a sign of a team that's getting deeper, and obviously a sign of a team that is hopefully ascending.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. When you go into your first preseason game and you've got 30 guys that don't even dress.
Yeah.
You're not doing that if those 30 guys are going to be locked into position battles. That's not how you do business. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think to your point, Paul, you're right. And I think this game could be an X factor game. Like a guy like Kaz Allen's going to have to take, like I said, a couple kicks back for touchdowns, or a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks is going to have a Mitch Tinsley type game with 2 TDs and 5 catches, and do those kind of things to finally separate themselves over the other guys that are on the same plane. Because we've seen hardly anything out of KJ Osborne. We've seen hardly anything out of Michael Gallup. We've seen hardly anything out of Luke McCaffrey. We've seen hardly anything out of oh my gosh, what's his name? He was on the Ravens. Now I just went totally, but the majority of the back end of our wide receiver room has been non-existent. I mean, there's been nothing, and bigger than that, there's been nothing explosive. And I think that this front office and this coaching staff is locked in on explosive plays. That's why you go get Debo. That's why you give Krosky Merritt the ball instead of Brian Robinson. That's why you're looking at some of those guys like that. And I don't think they're looking at it like they don't want 12 to 14 play drives all the time anymore. They'll do it when it's necessary. But when you got Jaden Daniels, you want the defense to play like they can score on you anytime. Because you do that, you change the way and then things change, It was kind of cool, guys like Cole Turner. But let's be honest, do you think Cole Turner's going to even get, they tried to force feed Ben Sinnott the ball a couple times this preseason. Didn't see anything there. Ertz is still going to be the guy. Bates is still your blocking tight end. He's your He's your 6th offensive lineman. You know what I mean? And he's picking up where he left off. There was a play in the last game where he blocked literally 2 inside linebackers at the same time. And it sprung Krosky Merritt for a touchdown. So I don't see, there's not really a position battle there. Defensively, you've got your linebackers, your starters set with Luvu, Wagner, and some flex there. Von Miller's going to be your edge rusher. Interior D lineman. There's not the guys they brought in are pretty much filling out the roster. I don't think there's any position battles. So,
yeah,
this could be an exciting, boring game if you know what I'm saying. This could be where you're watching for the big plays and you're having fun, but it's boring because because 96% of this game is going to be absolutely nothing to anybody.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's across the league too. The last game is
right. Well, other than that, do you guys have any other guys that you have highlighted or fallen in love with that nobody's really talking about this preseason, or are we just ready for the regular season to get here and stop speculating over all the BS?
I'll tell you who I fell in love with again. That would be Jaden Daniels. 4 plays, but oh my gosh,
and he didn't even complete a pass.
That's right. So yeah.
Yeah. And a big grin on his face when he knows he should have slid, but he wanted that touchdown, man. He wanted it. So it was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was officially my biggest preseason cheer of all time. I will admit. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, fellas, I don't know that. I guess that's about. We can wrap things up with that. The majority of the details were in the Bengals game. Like I said, I don't think we're going to see much on Saturday, but it'll still be. We only get 17 regular season games, so anytime we can see our boys don our colors, go out there and play football, it's fun to witness. So, if you guys don't have anything else, I think I'm good, and we can give a cheers to everything and say we're like 2.5 weeks away from real meaningful football, right? It's September 7th.
Yeah,
we're like 18 days away from our first regular season game when we open up against the Giants, who look improved. We don't have to get big into them right now, but they're going to be kind of. I'm curious what they're going to look like with Russ, right? And Russ is their starting quarterback now, and what that offense is going to look like, and that defense. That defensive line looks nasty, but we can dig into more into them next week or the week after as we're leading in. So, if you guys have nothing else, I'm good to go, boys. And as always, I'll say it's been a pleasure, and that'll do, pigs. That'll do.